My nominee, Elizabeth, or Eliza Hamilton, deserves an induction into the NHS Hall of Fame because of how much she did for her family during a time when women were not seen as much other than for raising babies and keeping the house, and for the steps she took to help children all around New York flourish. She came from a very wealthy family in New York, as her father, Philip Schuyler, was also from a very wealthy family and was a general in the American Revolutionary War. She met her husband, Alexander Hamilton, in 1780, and they were married later that year. Eliza was not a typical housewife, though. Alexander was busy for much of the marriage with politics and war, so Eliza managed the house and 8 children by herself, one of which was an orphan she took in. She was also active in Alexander's work, such as helping him write George Washington's farewell address. Her life took a dramatic turn from 1801 to 1804, where her son, husband, father, and sister all died in the span of these 3 years. Instead of succumbing to her grief, she threw herself into charity work, paving the way for many women at the time to create their own charities. She created New York's first private orphanage, the Orphan Asylum Society, which is still standing today. In her 27 years as a director there, she oversaw more than 750 children. She also created the Hamilton Free School, to make sure that all children could be literate. She lived as a widow for 50 years, and in this time made sure that Hamilton's story would be told, reaching out to biographers and assistants to make sure his legacy lived on. She became an honored member of the White House in her later years, until she died at the age of 97. She was an amazing mother, wife, citizen, and made her mark on America. Elizabeth Schuyler Hamilton is a woman who is much deserving of being in the NHS Hall of Fame. Eliza was born on August 9, 1757, to a wealthy family in New York. She had 2 sisters and grew up with great schooling, but she preferred the outdoors. In February 1780, she met Alexander Hamilton, and the two instantly became infatuated. In one letter, 7 months after they were married, Alexander wrote back to Eliza that he, quote, feasted for some time on the sweet effusions of tenderness that they, her letters, contained, and my heart returned every sensation of yours. In another, he wrote that, quote, for though it is the pride of my heart to love you, it is the torment of it to love you so much, separated as we are now. These letters showed how much he was in love with her. Eliza reciprocated the sentiment, stating that Hamilton made her, quote, the happiest of women. My dear Hamilton is fonder of me every day. Eliza was more than just a pretty face, though. She was instrumental in keeping the Hamilton household together due to Alexander's many duties that kept him away from the home. She raised 8 children and ran the house all by herself, never complaining about the duty. Eliza was also extremely supportive of her husband, viewing his enemies as her own and standing by him no matter what. She was also around when Alexander wrote the Federalist Papers, and even helped him write the farewell address. Eliza's life took a turn, however, in the early 1800s. 4 of the people closest to her, including her sister, father, son, and husband, all died in the span of 3 years. She was left to deal with both her grief and the entire Hamilton family. She lost their family home, the Grange, which was an elaborate mansion that Alexander and Eliza planned to make together, and was struggling to keep herself afloat financially. Her greediness was shown, however, when she bought back the Grange and threw herself into charity work. Inspired by Alexander, who was an orphan himself, and the orphan daughter she raised, Eliza created the first private orphanage in New York City, the Orphan Asylum Society. She helped care for and educate over 750 children in her 27 years there as a director. One man who was helped by her orphanage was Thomas Henry Haynes. In 1937, he was sent to the Graham School, which had been renamed from the Orphan Asylum Society. He wrote about how lucky he was to be put in such an educational, safe environment. Gratefully, he states that, quote, without Eliza Hamilton and Isabella Graham, who knows what my childhood, or the rest of my life, would have been. This is just one man who has been affected by Elizabeth Schuyler Hamilton. Eliza also founded the Hamilton Free School later on in life, to make sure that every kid could have an education for free. In addition to creating an orphanage and school, Eliza dedicated herself to making sure the world knew who Alexander Hamilton was. She committed to reading and sorting all of his papers, enlisting assistants and biographers to help. She sent out papers to his old colleagues and was instrumental in putting together all of his work over the years. She also kept defending him and who he was as a person. For example, she continued to hold a grudge against James Monroe for leaking part of the Reynolds affair and never let him into her home. Eliza also helped establish a monument for George Washington. She lived to be 97, and in that time had countless presidents and fans visit her and pay their respect. She was not only Alexander Hamilton's wife, she had made a name and legacy for herself, too. After learning more about Elizabeth Schuyler Hamilton, I can confidently say that she deserves a spot in the A-Push Hall of Fame. She was an incredible mother and wife, but more than that, a resilient, caring, strong woman who made incredible steps in women-made organizations with her orphanage and school. She kept herself financially stable in a rough period of her life, and always stood up for who and what she believed in. Her husband has a musical written about him, and although some of her accomplishments are included, argue that she deserves her own musical.